You know, I always wondered what I would look like with glasses on, and now I finally know. Makes me look smarter, doesn't it? Convenient fireworks. Anyway, that silly intro aside, hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is the last day of the year and we're moving into 2017, so I just wanted to film this video real quick to tell you how great this year has been and also share the books, my top rated books that I read during 2016. And I'm trying to film this with the fireworks on already going, even though it's only 4 in the afternoon right now. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy and let's get into it. By the way, I totally loved Rogue One and also bought the glasses, as you could see, and I think those are really cool, so I'm even going to watch the movie one more time to make sure I enjoy it to the fullest, because it was a super cool movie and, in my opinion, one of the coolest Star Wars movies ever. So say what you will. Alright, moving on to the books. I read a total of 71 books this year and it was a bit hard narrowing it down to just 10 books that I really loved. But I managed to do it, and they're in no particular order because I couldn't really decide which ones I like more or less, so let's get started with the first book. So the first book I want to mention is actually a series that I finished in 2016, and it all started with A Daughter of the Empire, a book by Raymond D. Feist and Jenny Wirtz, which I read in the end of 2015 actually, but I read this other 2 books left in the trilogy in 2016 and I completely fell in love head over heels with the books. Those were published in the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, so if you're into classic fantasy with a super epic twist and large scale and set in an Asian kind of fantasy world which is at war, you really need to pick this one up. This series brings the scale of court intrigue to a totally new height, and it's impossible. If you love intrigues and plots and murders, this is definitely a book for you. It's following Mara, who is becoming into power as the rest of her family is murdered. She was going to become a part of a religious organization, but she gets pulled out in the last minute because all her family is now dead and she is the heiress of the House of Akoma and she would do anything to protect it. She's just 16 years old, but she has to protect it from powerful enemies that wish her harm and want to destroy her house from the surface of the world. And it's completely epic. It's showing the journey of Mara through the years. It takes such a whole chunk of time and makes it so interesting and so vivid, and the world building is just top notch, so definitely pick it up in the library or just cover the shops for it. There are a couple covers, but I like the originals most of all, so yeah, moving on to the next book. The next book on my list is definitely a favorite, and I'm sorry I don't have it on hand because it stayed in Russia even though I bought it here. This is The Double Life of Mr. Scath Kavanagh. This is a piece of historical fiction written by Marina Fiorato, and definitely it also has a second name. In some countries it's published by Kit, so the book's name is just Kit, or The Double Life of Mr. Scath Kavanagh. And if you like the story of Mulan, of Disney's Mulan, you would really enjoy this book. It's following Kit, who is working as a barmaid in Ireland when the soldiers of Ireland are recruited for a new war, and the war is going on in Italy, and Kit's newly-wed husband is actually recruiting and disappearing into the forces before she can do anything about it, and she's determined to recover him. Therefore she is pretending to be actually a guy and enlists in the army herself to be taken to where her husband is, and this is the journey of her trying to find him and actually her pretending to be a guy for most of the story and also playing the spy. And this is an amazing book with 2 parts. One of them is her in the army and the second is actually her being a spy, and I loved both parts equally, and it's totally one of my favorite pieces of historical fiction, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. The next book on my list is one of the highlights of 2016 for me, and this is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which I got to read in the spring. This is a high fantasy by Robin Hobb, who is an absolute master. She made me fall in love with the characters and with Fitz. It's following the story of Fitz, who as a young boy was brought to the court life because he was abandoned by his mother, and he is a royal bastard, one of the royal princes, and he has to survive in court without his father, and he has to build a life for himself, and the only path that's open to him in court is to become an assassin. So he is learning how to become an assassin in this book, and it's so vivid and it's so engrossing and it's really amazing, and I got the series waiting for me, so I'll pick them up in January as soon as I can because I really miss this world. Another book that I don't have is because I read it from the library, and this is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is one of the classics of the thriller genre, and this is a book I loved so much I completely didn't expect it. And the opening sentence of the book, it starts with, "Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again," and the story that is opening up in front of you in this book is totally mesmerizing. It's following a young woman who is enraptured with a man who has a very mysterious past, and as the girl is becoming more and more involved with this man, she comes to live with him in Manderley, a big mansion in England which was ruled by the man's ex-wife, and she is constantly being haunted by the presence of the ex-wife. And this is the story of how much the perspective on things can make a difference in one's life. And actually, this is a big mystery book, and I really enjoyed it. A book that has already made an appearance on many booktubers' videos is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and look at this huge book. It's completely amazing. It blew me away. When I read it, I was feeling like the plot was everything I ever wanted it to be, and I can't wait for the next book in the series. And I'm not gonna talk too much about it because you probably heard about this series already, so I'm just gonna say that I definitely love this book, and I'm looking forward to the next book this May. The next book I want to talk about is The Trials of Apollo by Rick Riordan. Rick is very famous for his children and young adult fantasy stories following the Percy Jackson world, and The Trials of Apollo was the last book that I read by him this year, and it completely blew me away. I really loved Heroes of Olympus, but something about Apollo's story really engrossed me, and I think the haikus played a major part in that because they were so witty and so funny. I just couldn't let go of him, and I'm definitely looking forward to reading the second book in the series next year. An August favorite of mine that I have talked about already on the channel, but not in too much detail, is Still Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer. This is a science fiction novel. It's engrossing. It comes in 2 parts. 7 Surrenders comes out in January, and I'm totally looking forward to that book. And it's completely amazing. I loved it so much. It's following this universe, our universe actually, in the future, when no part of the world is inaccessible and a completely different governmental structure is taking place. The story is following the perspective which is told from the point of view of Mycroft Canner, who is an ex-convict, making up for his sins by serving the society and doing whatever is necessary for those who command him. And this is the story of a very extraordinary boy which Mycroft discovers, and the story of the world changing because of the powers that this boy has. Even though the learning curve with this book is very high and the initial jump into it might be very difficult because of all the unfamiliar information, I feel like it's definitely worth your time because it will blow you away, I'm sure of it, and I'll do a full review on it very soon. Another fantasy classic that moved me so much, which I read this year, was The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle, and I read this book and I completely fell in love with the story. It's short and it's magical, and it's following the story of a unicorn who discovers that she is the lost in the universe, and she is doing her best to recover her lost unicorn family, and this is the story of her and the story of humanity, and it's so heart-wrenching but beautiful at the same time. A book that also left a lasting impression is Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. It's a magical realism book full of brimming with magic to the point that it's overflowing, and the characters aren't as important in this book as the setting, even though there is a very beautiful love story and a battle between 2 magicians, and it's adding something extra to the story, and I can't wait to be engrossed in the world with a reread sometime later on as well. And last for this video, I'm talking about The Book Thief by Markus Zusak, a book that tore me to shreds when I first read it. I knew what I was going into, I was prepared, but I still had the waterworks so badly by the end of the book. It's following Liesel, who is living in Nazi-occupied Germany, and she is an orphan and she is living in an adoptive family, and she's trying to make the best of her circumstances, and this is such a vivid and bright and book that is filled with hope but also with reality, that it's impossible not to feel anything for the girl or the characters in this book. So there you have it, guys. That was all for this video, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next year, in 2017. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and I hope you guys have a wonderful New Year's Eve. Bye bye!